with me as I do that. And why do we record? Why do we record? Well, we record each session in order to give you something to refer back to if you'd like to see anything a second time, or if you happen to have to miss a session, you can watch the recording and then do your quizzes and the like, and still be gathering that information. We know how crazy life can get. So you'll see on the screen there, we've got Kathy the chorus. And hello, Kathy.
Hello, Ken. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. So I'll be your program coordinator. So please get in touch. Sorry. My name's Kathy. I work for Safe System Solutions. I just get straight into it. So I'm the person in the background. So if you can't make a session or you have any technical issues or anything like that, please get in touch with me. Some Zoom keeping, if you would like to chat. As you've noticed, we can't see or hear you. So if you'd like to say something, please type it into the chat. The little 3 dots next to it is a great way to change it to everyone so that everyone can see your comment. If you'd like to ask a question anonymously, use the Q&A function. And if you would like to talk, you can raise your hand and we can unmute you at any time and you can say your piece.
Thanks, Kathy. And yeah, really encourage everybody to use that everybody and have a chat in the background. We can't, we're in these online ones, we don't get to have lunch together and have that bit of a chat, but certainly in the background here, putting your thoughts in, your comments is a really good way to do it. Hafez will also be using the Miro board, and some of you, he tells me, are already in there and jumping around and excited. For those who haven't used it, we will talk you through how to do that, but you will have received a link. We'll put the link into the chat as well as we go. But we do use this webinar version of Zoom just to minimize on the dogs barking in the background and the people accidentally forgetting to unmute and all of those bits and pieces. But do be very active in the chat. And we will ask you questions. So you will have to answer in the chat and like as well. So use the chat. The other really important thing is the learning management system. And the learning management system, you would have received an email from Safe System Solutions to give you access to the learning management system. You need access to the learning management system to successfully complete this course. So if you haven't got that, get in contact with Kathy and she will ensure you have access. At the end of this session, I'll just very quickly show you in there the little bits and pieces where you can find things. Now we have 4 presenters for this course, and it's quite exciting. As Hafez mentioned there in the bit of discussion we were having, it's evolving and people are adding bits and pieces and finding out what people are interested in. But we've got Hafez Alavi, and I will introduce Hafez shortly, and he's going to be leading today's session on the why of raised crossings. We have Bridget Doran from New Zealand, and she will be discussing the who. So who are we designing for and what do we need to think about all the people that would use raised crossings. Prue Osman from Queensland is going to be sort of honing in on where we get the best value for raised crossings and how we think about choosing or selecting the sites and the locations and what some of the factors you need to consider. And I'm Ken Beer, for those I don't know, and I will be talking about the how, which is the engineering, the design, considerations, lighting, ramp gates, pavement, signs, drainage, all of those sorts of aspects around the how, site distances and the like. Now, some of you will have a particular interest or that you want to know something specific about one of these areas. Potentially, you're here to find out about something as well as bigger picture things. If you have that, feel free to type it in the chat and we'll make sure whoever of the 4 of us will cover that. I'm sure we likely will, but at any point, feel free to pop that into the chat. And I mentioned Hafez is going to lead this course, and many of you will know Hafez already because he is a super passionate advocate for road safety, but he comes at it from a a wealth of research background, where he has a PhD in road safety, in the road safety field. He's an engineer, and he also has been managing extremely large infrastructure projects for governments in investment in road safety. He has a wonderful outlook and take on sustainability and safety. And he uses that to implement these projects, such as the multi-billion-dollar Safe System Road Infrastructure Program in Victoria, which he led that as the director of that program. But he also does that through a passion for trying to upskill industry across the world, really, on good practice in road safety and sustainable transport. So it's really exciting to have Fez. He's one of the most passionate people you'll find in this space. So it's a hold on to your seat and get ready for what Hafez will have in store for us for the next 2 hours. We're going to have a small coffee break in there, which Hafez will time, so you will have a chance to fill up your coffee within the session. I just want to pay my respects and acknowledge the very traditional owners of lands that we're running this training on, and there are quite a few lands, because we have people from all across Australia, New Zealand, and internationals, and so we're really thrilled and excited to have such a diverse crowd, and we pay respects to elders past, present, and emerging across the varied lands. So on that note, Hafez, I can hand the slides over to you now, and you can lead us on a little bit of a journey. But if anybody has any questions, pop them into the chat. I'll be reading the chat behind the scenes, feeding questions to Hafez. I'll be, and maybe answering a few things in the chat as well, and we'll have a good conversation. Over to you, Hafez.
Thank you, Ken. It actually fills me with pride when a good practitioner like yourself has so many nice and generous words, and it doesn't stop sort of, filling my heart with passion and, gratitude. So thank you very much indeed. And just to the participants, like what we're presenting today, as Ken mentioned, can be scaled. We have used this similar methodology for allocating $100,000, $500,000, $25 million investment plans. Billion-dollar investment can be organized and scaled by this methodology across a region. Sometimes we suggested that can be used for, say, Southeast Asia, and how we improve pedestrian safety across maybe 10 nations. So have a look at the material today from that perspective, and we're going to show you how you can scale up or down the material and approach. So let me share my presentation, and hopefully it works really nice and smoothly. So I go to slideshow. Great. And Ken, are we seeing the slideshow?
Looking good, Hafez. Ready to go.
Fantastic. So let's get into it. So today, I'm going to present you with the helicopter view of the course. So this course is like a pyramid of activities and exercises, and we start from the very strategic level, and we go to the very nitty and gritty of the operational level, which is design. So what is the purpose of today? It's about approaches and frameworks that we have to strategize raised pedestrian or other kind of crossings. So it is the high level strategizing and developing action plans. Speaking of action plans, the course is also about helping you thinking about mass action, like high level approaches that combines not just one crossing. It looks at areas or cities or councils and all about that. So why mass action is important? So while in this course, we're going to teach you individual crossing design and location and all the other aspects, which is very important. But at the same time, we encourage you to take them to the next level and do maybe 10 of them or 20 of them across an area and get the area-wide benefits. So mass action is good because area-wide, it's very cost-effective and creates economic vitality across an area when you do them together and treat a whole area. Also, it is quite safe system compliant. if you are trying to achieve zero like many other nations and jurisdictions. Also, it gives you a really good business case for you to take you to your decision makings and secure investment. And we have done that previously. Also, when you do it as a mass action, it increases inclusiveness and cohesiveness of your social and societal backgrounds. So when you do them together, you accommodate for everyone to go around and work, which is great. Finally, we have all the other societal concerns like climate action, environmental degradation that a more mass action program can address more effectively. Now, today I have 4 departments of exercises and training material to share with you. First, we're going to talk about why walking is important. Then we're going to wear a strategic lens and address the strategic aspect of pedestrian crossing or race crossings development. We're going to look at the strategic metrics that you can use in your business case developments. And then we're going to have a quick practice, which is very hands-on. And I have used the most practical advice that anyone can use. So in the last exercise, I'm not going to use any fancy tools or data sets or approaches. So it's quite usable for everyone. Now, walking is important, and we all know that. Recently, we developed a approach to promote active travel in Southeast Asia, and we used 5 different departments to quantify the impact of active travel. So they're about economy, environment, health, social, and transport benefits. So in terms of economy, we have knowledge and evidence that more active travel pedestrians boost local businesses. It lowers societal costs in terms of health and other investment in the infrastructure if we go to active travel. Environmentally, the perspective, we have better air quality, less noise, and more sustainable and less climate impacts if we go active travel. Health-wise, active travel is active travel. It's increased physical activity and all the benefits coming from it and lower disease rates. Also, in terms of social benefits, a more walkable society is more inclusive, it's more cohesive, and it allows people to enjoy a more democratic setting, if you will. And finally, if we want to do transport mode shift, going from cars to active travel, race crossings are very helpful. Active travel is very helpful. And also by doing them and mode shift, we increase safety benefits and reduce road trauma. Now, let's have our first action learning here. And I've opened the chat so I can see your answers here. Beautiful, the chat room is on. So the question here for you, tell me other reasons you think active travel is important from your perspective or from your knowledge. Why active travel is important? A few other reasons. Congestion management.
And so people are starting to pop that into the chat already, which is great. And give it a minute. And yeah, lots of people are doing really well there in sharing their thoughts with everybody with a little drop down, so everybody can sort of see their comments, which is great. Oh, we've got a very active group here at Fez, which is wonderful. So seeing lots of good stuff there, and I'll read through a few of them, but then you can pick and talk to any you decide. Good to clear the head, movement diversity, mental well-being, connecting friends who don't want to drive, social connection, cost saving, equity, reducing obesity in terms of health, reduce congestion, positive behavior for young drivers, less road costs, emission reductions, slow down traffic speed, promote health and well-being. That's wonderful stuff, isn't it?
So this is a really interesting reading here. So let me do a quick thematic analysis. So we have a department on mental health and well-being. Of course, active travel is important to increase health in the society. So we put it in the health department, both mental health and physical health. Then we have a department of transport And we have all the mention about congestion management and all the ways that, we can also educate drivers. So I put that theme under the transport mode. Then we have safety impact and safety benefits, which is a slowing the traffic, slowing down the traffic. So again, we put that under transport management. Then we have another series of comments under the environmental action, which is all the lesser noise, lesser like pollution, and better eco-friendly environments. Also, we have comments here about defining active travel or active transport. Active travel or active transport is a mode of transport that is chiefly driven by human power. It can be bicycles, it can be walking. Also, micromobility is a part of active travel. Then there's a spectrum. So think about the continuum from really motorized traffic to more human powered, and that's like a continual activity, going from mobility to active travel. Quickly looking at here, great. So I think we have covered the departments. Also, we have a few mentions of costs here. Again, costs can be a number of different departments. Costs can be maintaining infrastructure, doing infrastructure for cars or active travel. Active travel is usually cheaper, or costs through road trauma or health impacts of motorized traffic. Excellent. So I really like this. Let's have a look at another sort of maybe of a few other things that I can maybe add here. One really interesting finding we had is when we have more active travel, the property values go up. A really good comms and engagement tool to talk to your community. Also, as we discussed, and people have mentioned here, a more diverse and inclusive society comes through if we do more active travel, because more groups of people are able to come out and mingle, and more people have access to more active travel because they're cheaper. Also, when we do that, we allow for arts, for color, for all those festivals and events to come out, which is great. Another aspect of both economic prosperity and also social, I would say fun, they're fun. Okay, now, in the WHO's module of the course, we're going to talk about diverseness and inclusivity of race crossing. And Bridget will tell you how we can develop a very inclusive race crossing. Cool. Now, let's do our first Miro board exercise. For the first Miro board exercise, I usually give more time to people for them to acclimatize, but then in the next Miro board, we're going to be more quick on our feet. Let me share the Miro board and I'll tell you what the exercise is.
And I've just popped the link into the chat if anybody hasn't got it handy. So you'll be able to get in there, although I see lots of people flying around in the Miro board already.
So, are we seeing the Miro board here?
I am. I can see your Miro board.
Fantastic. So the exercise here is very simple. Think about yourself and your loved ones and tell us what might stop you, or what is actually stopping you from walking more, from being more active. We put a number of examples here, but tell us what you think.
Now, Hafez, I think we'll just give some basics on how to use the Miro board. So if you're not seeing what Hafez is seeing, you probably need to zoom out and go down a bit. I can see some people floating up the top. So you need to zoom out or drag down a bit. You'll find where Hafez is. So you can scroll out using the wheel key. You can scroll down using the right click button. And then over on the left there, you've got lots of options to put a little note, write some text. You've got some extra options with emojis and other things. So it's very, it's very much up to you. If you're having trouble with it, feel free to write in the chat. I still see a few people who are hovering up much higher than this slide. So zoom out a bit, go down, scroll down, and you'll find this. But it does look like some people are getting into it, Hafez.
Yes, and it's fascinating. I already start to see some things going on. So what I do in the background, I grab like different notes and put them in different departments for our quick discussions. So people just put in your notes and I will be dragging them down in the lower part to put them in different things.
Oh, okay. So yeah, everybody just write your little notes wherever you want, and feel free to pop anything down, add some text to it. And
it's very, very important. It's one of the beauties that I notice on Miro board, Ken, is these kind of quick thematic analysis and how sometimes we as a community converge to different sort of departments of thought, and how having these participants usually help me to see those kind of things going on and just understand the matter better. So it's great. I feel very excited.
We are really seeing some nice ideas have come in there, and they might move around a bit, but these are reasons why what's stopping you or your loved ones walking more. So let's give it another minute or so, Hafez. People, I think, still just a few people are getting their feet with the Miro board, how it works, and but we are now really starting to see lots of good stuff arriving. And so, Hafez, you're moving things around and getting some groupings going, which we will, you'll no doubt discuss. But please keep popping these in. This is wonderful. Yeah. As I mentioned, if anybody's having any trouble with the Miro board, type it into the chat. I'll see what I can do to help.
So Ken, I think we've got a really good thematic sort of, emergence here, and I'm happy to start chatting through the things, and we allow people to sort of, a minute or two add more comments. So people keep commenting, but let me start to sort of, have a quick sort of look at your comments. So here on the left-hand side, in this area that I focus on here, you have a number of behavioral factors. It might be individual behavioral factors, like, for example, you're time poor, or you have children or pets with you and that's difficult to walk, or you have an insecure environment around you that doesn't allow you to walk. So these are more behavioral factors that stops people from walking. It might be habits also, and other factors that, impact our behavior. We add attitude here. Some people are also having more attitude that is more car driven, and that sometimes doesn't help with active travel. If we move into the middle side almost, there is a spectrum from planning to design. So let me start with the bottom side here. So here we have all the design aspects. And this is where Ken in the last module goes into the nitty and gritty of helping you to design better crossings. A crossing that has better lighting, better access, all the aspect of design is considered, so people are not blocked or stopped by those elements. Then we talk about lacking facilities, which is also related to your network level planning. Sometimes we don't have that connectivity from origin to destination using active travel, or sometimes we have bottlenecks on the way. Sometimes the facilities are not commensurate to the demand, or they're not appropriate for the demand. For example, you have high-speed environment, no separation. So the concept of lack of proper planning or lack of proper facilities is another theme emerging here. In the middle of that, you have pedestrian safety, which is a key thing by itself. And you have mentioned perception and also actual safety. And both are very important because not many people have access to actual safety data and they trust their guts to allow their children or themselves to walk. So at least a number of things coming out. And also, Ken, I wanted to mention this spectrum and continuum is actually what we have designed the course for, going from the who, the why, the where, and the how. So it's the theme coming out through very nicely. Now, let's go back and have a quick look at another couple of exercises before we go to the strategic aspect of race crossings.
Thanks, Faiz. And I'll just remind everybody, we will go back to the Miro board for some other stuff. So no need to close that down, but Faiz will go back to sharing his slides now, which we can see on the screen.
Great. So next one. Why you suggested, like, and we really endorse that safety is a massive theme here. Why is that? Let me give you an example, a real example from Victoria from almost 10 years ago when we were doing the road safety injury inquiry, parliamentary inquiry, and this is one of the cases we used. So the information is also online available. Now, let's have a look at it. Before the incidents that I'm going to describe to you, this person, Alex, was a really wonderfully happy person, married, 2 kids, quite sociable, having a business, employing other people, having recreation happening in his life, a beautiful life happening before the incident. On the day of crash, that actually changed his life almost forever, he was out, like walking, taking a walk, taking a family dog for a walk in the evening. At this intersection of a 40K zone, he was hit by a car going 50K. Not good outcome. On the crash scene, at the crash scene, he had 50% chance of dying of the injuries, which was impact to the head, broken ribs, broken arm, broken femur, dislocated joints, like contusion, laceration, internal bleeding, hemorrhage, concussion. Crazy situation. So we did an anatomical sort of, examination, 50% chance of dying at the scene. 42 days he spent in the hospital and inpatient. I remember he had 3 different levels of surgeries for his injuries. Okay. At the time, we were running a longitudinal study, 6 months. We went back to Alex and said, hey, Alex, how are you going? And he said, hey, look, life is not good. I'm depressed. I'm anxious. I have continuous pain happening every day. I have limited activity in going around. I cannot work. My, social life and my family life is really impacted. So we continue sort of providing services. At the time, I was working for the Transport Accident Commission, and we have a really good program, Life Back on Track, that helps for the majority of people. Unfortunately, in this case, we had different scenario. 12 months, we went back to Alex and said, hey, Alex, how are we going now? Said, hey, look, marriage ended. We think it's related to the crash and its impact. I have lost my business. I cannot run my business anymore. I have started gambling. I feel disabled. I limp. I'm depressed. And I think about suicide almost every day. So going from a really happy contributing member of the society, carrying the weight of his family, his social life, being a contributor, to a person that is not happy with their life, we're going to help Alex to come back on track. So that's needless to say. We're going to do whatever we can to help this person to bring their life back on track. But let's stop these incidents from the first point. Like, let's cut them at the root. And that's why you're here in this course, I hope. So 4 elements of the SAFE system that help us to achieve that outcome. And they are our understanding of human vulnerability, that pedestrians don't have any protection against the blunt forces of crash. So we need to protect them, especially children, the elderly, and other sort of more vulnerable pedestrians. Human fallibility, both pedestrians and drivers can make mistakes, and the system should allow those mistakes not creating significant outcomes, harm to them. Also, in terms of human life and health, we need to have a road transport system that prioritizes safety. It's not that we accept impact on people's health and well-being because we want to provide mobility. That's not acceptable. And finally, whoever has more power, money, and authority needs to take more responsibility. So usually speaking, road authorities, us, need to be taking more responsibility. People need to abide by the rules, but eventually we have the ultimate responsibility. We're going to be talking about these principles in even more details and more implication for this training course in the where part, which is the third module of this course. Now, what is a race crossing? So my mate here going to be describing that very beautifully in the last module 4, but let me give you a taste. So what we see is like an elevated zebra or shared path or bicycle priority crossing that goes the entire roadway and is designed to be accessible for all and is supported by those elements of design is what we call a race crossing. But these are the characteristics, the description. What are the outcomes we're trying to achieve here? We want to achieve improved pedestrian mobility and accessibility, improved pedestrian safety, especially with safe system outcome we have in mind. Also, we want to create a better walking environment. Think about door to door, A to B, all origin to destination trips that covers. And also, we want to create cost-effective, free flow, compatible with roundabouts, facilities that can be used to address all of the Department of active travel benefit that we discussed. So these are the outcomes. In the how, as I mentioned, we're going to talk about these more. Now, maybe I open up the chat room again, and we have this quick sort of question. Look at this picture and tell us what you call these kind of facilities in your jurisdictions, in your language, professional language, I mean. Primary.
Okay. So we're seeing a few things in here. Raised zebra crossing, primary came in. I'm not sure whether that's referring to primary safe system treatment. Okay, so that's categorizing. Very nice. Raised zebra crossing, wombat crossing, lots of wombats there. And you might see a sneaky wombat down the bottom of the Hafez's slide there, snuck in there. We like the wombat, which is used in Australia, obviously. Raised wombat.
Wally.
Priority crossing. Raised table. Zebra crossing facility. Yeah, Wally. Wally's a.
So Ken, let me reiterate what you just observed. So it's great that you quickly categorize wombats or race crossing or pedestrian crossing or raised zebra crossings as a primary safe system treatment. That's very important. We think also that it is a primary solution, and we're going to talk about that. But also really acknowledging all the perspective you talked about. We call them different things in different jurisdictions, but mainly we call them race crossings or priority race crossings or pedestrian race crossings or wombat crossings, and all of them are correct. But it's great for us to understand the spectrum of definition that we have. Almost all of them talk about the same concept.
Yeah, and there's some mention of raised safety platforms in there, which depending on, I suppose, where you are in the world, some would sort of have that a bit more as a platform on the approach to an intersection or the like, which may not have a crossing on it. But some areas of the world, I mean, it is a platform and you can walk over it. So I think it's good to see that there is a variety of terminology, and you've done a really good job there of making sure everybody's clear at the start what we are talking about for this course, which is that priority movement control, full length of the road with the raised area. for pedestrian cyclists and others to travel.
Exactly. So yeah, just like, I'm quite teased to talk about that differentiation between race safety platforms and race crossings, but Ken, I will leave that to you in the design aspect. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, let's continue, and this is like another like interesting quiz, and we're gonna have the first prize of today for this one. So think about a race crossing and tell us a properly designed race crossing. What is the impact of that on pedestrian fatal and serious injuries in terms of reduction? And we have 4 options here. We have 20%, 40%, 70%, 95%, going from okay to silver bullet treatment.
Okay, well, people have their guesses in there. I think a really good point that was made there by Jim was to ask what would the general public call one of these race crossings, that we should always keep that in mind and try and keep it simple. And I think raised crossing, which is what we tried to go with for the course title, is a fairly good one. Now, Hafez,
we have a sort of consensus here, and Sean, I think, was the first one to tell the correct number. So a properly designed race crossing is based on evidence we have, which is a number of different studies, is around 70% effective to reduce fatal and serious injuries of pedestrians. And 70% is correct, and it's like the majority of you said 70%. So it is not a silver bullet treatment, but it can become a silver bullet treatment if you put it across an area, a number of them, reduce the speed manage, and have other infrastructure support around them to ensure that your area is safe. So you see, maybe individually not silver bullet, but through a mass action, it can be actually really, really effective.
Yeah, and so we're going to give a prize out there to Sean, and there is the ability to win prizes, even though we're on the online version. You'll be sent in the post your certificate eventually when you successfully complete the course, and we'll sneak a few prizes in there if you picked up any along the way. And the questions that's come in: what is meant by this term silver bullet you mentioned there, Hafez?
Yeah, sure. So we actually, again, you guys mentioned about that sort of a spectrum from, supporting or non-being safe systems or compliant to be primary and transformative safe system, treatments, measures, and, all that. So we have a continuum. So a silver bullet is, we call it maybe a zero harm solution. What does it mean? It means that a solution that minimizes or reduces the road trauma risk to a level that is practically zero, so nobody is hurt or seriously injured at that location. So zero harm solutions are minimizing risk to the very practical zero level. Now, a race crossing doesn't do that, but it gets us really close, 70% to that ultimate goal. So that's why we call it a very good solution.
Right, thank you.
Okay, so now let's delve into a little bit more big picture, the helicopter view, and imagine that you're the strategic planner sitting in your various level of government or consultancy. Your manager comes to you and say, hey, look, I've got this sort of urban area that I want to invest some money into doing a mass action of race crossings. How would you go about that? So as a part of my research for this course and prior to that, I have identified 3 areas of strategic approaches that can be combined to help active travel. So they're not designed specifically for race crossings because they were designed for higher level for active travel, but they can really nicely be applied to race crossing strategizing. So what are the elements? Three elements. Road and street functions. They We call them, there are different definitions around them, and I will discuss them in later slide. But think about the function of your roads and streets and the impact of that on identification of race crossings. Then it is active traveler connection. So how we create a network, and remember about your blocker mirror slide that you talked about, the network a bit failing us to deliver like walking activities or walking possibilities. So creating that network of walking that allows people to go from A to B in the network. And finally, also you mentioned pedestrian safety risk aspects. But let me go a little bit deeper, give you a little bit more details here. So in terms of road and street function, it's very important for us to understand which roads or streets are amenable for us to put race crossing on them, or which roads and streets need some help to become amenable to put race crossings on them. As you will see in this course, there are very few roads that we don't think you can put race crossings on. The majority of roads are either intrinsically amenable for race crossings, or you can do something with them and make race crossings work. Then it is walking destinations and routes to those destinations, which is about more walking demand, pedestrian networks, and providing a transport system that allows people to walk from every A to any B, sometimes linking with other modes as well, but essentially being able to walk wherever they want to go. And finally, it's about where pedestrian safety, risk, and trauma lies, and how we can use that knowledge to identify areas for race crossings and treatments and improvement. Again, let's go to a bit deeper level here. What strategic tools do we have to do these aspects of strategic planning? So in terms of road and street function in Australia and New Zealand, and in some other jurisdictions internationally, we have movement and place. So the movement and place framework is an understanding of the nature of a space in the road transport system in terms of it providing place functions, accessibility functions, getting to your destination, home, education, shops function, or mobility function, traveling from A to B as quick as possible to get the stuff done at the end. So mobility versus place. And how a space in the transport system is located or situated in this platform, we can define different characteristics about it. And we will be talking about that a little bit later today. So just remember place versus movement functions. In terms of pedestrian network, it's all about understanding that helicopter view of your road network and where your pedestrians want to go, or where your pedestrians are going at the moment, and they go hand in hand, but not fully overlapping. Let me double click on that. When we look at an urban environment, we see counts of pedestrians going around, and sometimes we mistake that with the actual demand of walking. It's not. As you identify in the mirror exercise, there are numerous reasons people don't walk. So that's called the latent demand. So when we are planning, we need to consider latent demand and provide for that if we want to be progressive. And that's the concept of pedestrian networks. And finally, it's about pedestrian risk. And you are familiar with all those heat maps that we have for pedestrian safety risk. In the previous courses, we identified that people are familiar with movement and place sufficiently to make decisions. But when it comes to pedestrian network analyses or road risk analyses, participants wanted to know even more. So in this course, I added new material here for you. So let's go and double click on that. Let us start with pedestrian demand forecasting. So the concept here is a planner should know how many pedestrians are using the network and where. A little bit more, it's wonderful if they know what composition those pedestrian volumes have in terms of age, different demographic or capability or inclusion perspectives, for them to be able to design a more providing system. Now, there are a number of methods out there that can help us with pedestrian demand analysis. So they are comparison studies, sketch planning, direct demand analysis, spatial analysis, models like discrete choice and network modeling that can be applied to pedestrians. Let me give you a little bit more details here. So a comparison study is where a planner look at similar spaces or locations in the network when they have data and use that data for the proposed location. So they actually don't have money to go out and count pedestrians or do modeling, so they use similar commensurate figures. Sketch planning is actually developing a simple spreadsheet based on land use and some assumptions about the distribution of your trips from origin to destinations to understand where your pedestrians are going. A direct demand analysis is actually a predictive regression model, which uses factors of land use and network characteristics to forecast or predict number of pedestrians or walking trips. And please, if you find some of these terms or definitions a bit like not in your field, we have put documents in the resources for you to actually go and read about them and educate yourself. If you have questions, please come back to us and we give you even more resources or more answers. Now, spatial analysis. So spatial analysis is actually getting that predictive modeling and take it to the geospatial level. So use geospatial techniques and information to do that kind of modeling. Then you have behavioral models, and behavioral models are very interesting. They are probabilistic models based on human behavior, infrastructure factors, and they use them to forecast where pedestrians might be going around your network. Speaking of network models are actually us sort of transcribing car-oriented or vehicle-based traffic model or transport models for pedestrians. Now, I've got a number of questions here, Ken. Where do pedestrian desire lines come to play? So pedestrian desire lines talk about a few things. First, they talk about human behavior and desire, and we can consider that in behavioral models like discrete choice when we talk about that last length of pedestrian choice. So if I maybe expand on that, we know all the transport models which are based on four aspects of trip generation, mode choice, route choice, and also all that sort of planning aspect. What you're saying is about potentially route choice and also sometimes facility choice. So these are more behavioral. There is a researcher shown at the Athens University of Technology, and her work is actually focusing on that desire lines. I will send you the paper. Very, very interesting works. Now, let me talk about some of the, I would say drawbacks of these methods. So no method is perfect, and these methods have their problems as well. So when you go comparison, you might lose accuracy because you're not doing anything about the location. The sketch planning has accuracy and generic assumption issues. Direct demand has data availability issues, which is similar to geospatial methods. And also with discrete choice, we have that data and expertise sort of issues because they're quite data and expertise hungry. And with network model, you need to spend so much money to get the data. So depending on your project and your priority, you can use any of these methods that fits your study. At the end of today, before coffee, I'm going to give you practical advice. If you didn't have any of these, I'm going to give you some advice how to come up with an understanding of pedestrian demand. So don't be rattled that you don't have any of these. Okay, now have a look at pedestrian risk assessment. And here I'm drawing on my own research in my PhD and some other work I have done during my career to develop pedestrian risk assessment methods. So we all are familiar with those heat maps. There are a number of fundamental issues with them. So warning, in the worst case, they are just a heat map of current history of road trauma. In the better models that I have developed, for a program in Victoria, they are actually predictive geospatial regression models that use land use, transport network characteristics, and exposure measures to forecast pedestrian trauma. Better, but we have room for improvement. What is the room for improvement? So there are 7 different methods in the market at the moment that can be used for assessing pedestrian risk. So some of them are perception-based or based on crash history, as we discussed. Some of them get some equivalent of fatal and serious injuries. Let me explain to you what I mean. When you look at road crash databases for a location, it usually gives you the number of serious road trauma, like fatal and serious injuries, and the number of crashes. Usually those crashes have intrinsic possibility of creating trauma. For example, I'll give you one potential example. A T-bone or a side impact is, say, 60–70% at certain speed to be creating road trauma. In a certain case, in your database or in your location, that might have not created road trauma, but you need to be able to use those factors to turn crashes to actual trauma, another way. And then you have all the RAP models, ANRAM, OSRAP, IRAP, very useful. And then you have more, we would call them safety science approaches that use empirical based models, very rigorous models. And as you see the colors here, the first 3 models or approaches are not statistically robust, not recommended. And the last 4 are more statistically robust. While I personally recommend more empirical based, these 4 models are good enough to be used. Now, really quickly, practical advice. So if you didn't have any of those, you didn't have a movement and place framework or pedestrian demand models or Bayes models, what would you do? Simply, you can do these things. With movement and place, or with your road and street function, just survey your community's activities, document them, detect high activity areas, zone and streets, focus on narrower, lower speed, less traffic, and more activity area for choosing location of race crossings, avoid high speed or make high speed lower to allow for race crossing. In terms of pedestrian network, again, really capture and map your destination for pedestrian trips and their origins. Understand what is the count of pedestrians or estimate them. And then based on that, identify a map of walking attraction, routes, and potential volumes. And also you can use your crash and history of road trauma to identify those heat maps. Not recommended, but if you don't have anything else, better than nothing. So these practical methods are actually to help you. And in the next part of this training course, I'm going to use these simple methods to do some job for you. And you see they work, but they can be improved. Now, let's have a look at chat room and see if there's any questions. Ken, do we have any questions?
Nothing at this stage, but do keep your questions coming in as we go. And I think we'll be stopping for our coffee break fairly shortly, I think.
Yes, you're right.
Oh, very, very shortly.
So, Ken, I think I suggest we have 5 minutes of coffee break. It's sort of, getting your legs stretched, get your coffee, think about what we discussed, and come back. We have more material.
Yes, thank you, Fez. You've done a good job of getting, us a nice overview. We'll get into some more detail when we get back. I'm going to pause the recording and we'll see you back in 5 minutes. to it.
Fantastic. So the first leg of the course today, we went a bit high speed. We wanted to cover many areas and just give you a taste of different tools and models and thinkings and methods. But remember two things. If you take away two things from the first part of the course, I will be happy. You can do mass action race crossings, very important. Also, if you are the planner and somebody comes to you and say, hey, how we can strategize for race crossings, just say 3 ways. I look at the road and street function, I look at my pedestrian demand, and I look at my pedestrian risk, and they will tell me where to put my race crossings and how many of them. But remember these two, you will have enough in your armamentarium to go and fight for pedestrian race crossings. Again, there's quite a few details there in the also resources, and you know where to find them. Now, let me share my slides. And this is like, next slides or next series of slides come from my personal experience. How to convince decision makers to spend money on pedestrians. Very important. Not having money is not a good situation to be in, especially when it comes to active travel. So how we go and encourage action treatment or mass action treatment for pedestrians? By developing good business cases. How do we develop good business cases? What are the good business metrics for active travel? But before that, let me tell you why strategic metrics are important to justify or plan for race crossings. 4 elements. First of all, we need to show our decision makers the value of investment into active travel. When we were talking about blockers, or when we were talking about the benefits of walking, you identified quite a few benefits for walking. Some of them are direct impacts, I call them, health benefit, environment benefit, safety benefits. Some of them are derivative, like congestion management benefits, or societal costs in terms of pavements and infrastructure benefits. Direct, indirect costs and benefits should be included in your business case, and decision makers love to hear that. Also, for developing more convincing business cases, we need to be able to identify and quantify all these benefits. Motorized business cases or motorized vehicle business cases are really good at that. And that's why usually they get all the money, majority of them. Okay. Also, it's very important for us to understand those metrics if we want to prioritize the money we have. Imagine that you're sitting and they allocate $1 million in investment in active travel, and you want to spend that money as efficiently, as effectively as possible. How to prioritize that? Metrics are important. And also, when you do projects and programs, it's important for you to monitor, like have a sort of a safety or performance indicator that you can use to sort of show decision makers that their money is actually invested properly and produces outcomes properly. Now, let's have a look at UK's economic case for action, and they use a really good model for the developing business case for action, for active travel. So what they did, they identified a number of really key factors that they could actually quantify. There were noise, air quality, greenhouse gas impact, journey quality, physical activity, crashes, trauma, economic efficiency, as you mentioned here, decongestion, wider public sort of finances, also some approaches of present value benefits, transport budget impacts, and all that. Some of these are really relevant to the conversation we're having today, and they are environmental benefit, physical and health benefit, and economic efficiency, and also safety, as I mentioned. So it's very important for you to document all these and use them in your business case. In this case for UK, they were able to show a 5.5 BCR for the action, which meant that for $1 spent in active travel, the society gets benefit of $5.5. Great. If you can show that. At the same time, a warning. Sometimes we cannot build a case for good BCRs, benefit cost ratios, for a variety of reasons. There, you can rely or resort to duty of care that we need to provide for our vulnerable pedestrians, especially children, elderly, people with disability, and all that. And we don't need to justify the costs. This is duty of care. Okay. Let's have a look at some of these strategic metrics now. So we have identified a number of metrics that talk about economy aspect of things, business growth or property value increases, or costs of active travel, which is like, less household or transport infrastructure costs or maintenance. As you have mentioned in the course today as well, mental health is important, and also the value of creating more democratic, more inclusive and cohesive societies, and also improvement in quality of life. But some of the cases that we have discussed here are properly used already in Australia and New Zealand. I want to use the example from Auckland. In Auckland, when they were developing the cycling investment or interventions, they use a really nice infographic or based on good data that they talked about the health benefit, like better allocation of space in the road system, less pollution impact, fewer injuries, and fewer health costs, and also household costs to justify the investment in cycling. So what we're taking away from these is there are quite a few number of metrics. Some of them are monetized, some of them are not monetized, that can be used in your business cases. Now, before jumping to the next part of this course, I want to do an exercise with you, and let's jump to the Miro and see what is your case today. Let me bring up the Miro and I will tell you what we want to achieve with action learning number 3.
Now, I'll just remind everybody to get to this one, you just need to scroll down. It's the next one down. So some of you are still floating around on the first activity or learning activity 2. Action learning 3 is where we're at. So you just need to scroll down. You can zoom out and scroll down, or you can just scroll down and find the next page.
Fantastic. And people are already addressing the exercise, but let me quickly describe what we try to achieve here. So for us in this course, and I'm not talking about the module today, I'm talking about the whole module system. It's important for us to understand where you're coming from. Are you developing a race crossing? Are you developing a planning strategy, or are you investing in it? Are you an advocacy group? Are you a consultant designing them? It's very important for us to understand your case, so we tailor our sort of feedback and our sort of material to suit you. So put down here, what is your case? Simply, when you go out of this course, how you're going to use the knowledge, the practice. Oh, I love this. I need to take a screenshot of this.
Good. Okay, we're getting people jumping in there and having a think about it.
Yes. Right away jumps at me this comment here: sell race crossing to residents. And Ken, that's relevant to the comment you made a bit earlier about communication and engagement, having the right messages. And we know that even if you have the best solution for the community, unless you're not able to sell it to them, they're not going to buy it. It's going to explode in your face. So very important.
Oh, I couldn't agree more, Hafez. It's amazing, isn't it? did all of our engineering, and we're very confident in the science behind things and everything like that. And all the time, it's all about that communication and getting people on board. And certainly, both Bridget and Prue will expand on that more. You've got some good stuff coming up on that, and I have a bit associated with maybe how to engineer and design to alleviate some of the concerns that some members of the public might have.
Yeah.
But we'll give it a little bit of time, because I see some people jotting some good ideas, people putting multiple ones down, which is absolutely fine.
So I think what I'm seeing here, and this is terrific. I see almost all the gamut of a road infrastructure life cycle covered here. And let me talk about that a bit, and then I tell you, which part is, which in terms of comments here. So when we are thinking about a road infrastructure life cycle, it starts with business case development and a strategy. Then it goes to more detailed planning and developing that strategy into program and investment plans. Then getting those investment plan and strategic directions into more detailed concept development. Get those concepts and turn them into detailed design. Deliver and monitor that detailed design. Evaluate the outcome, complete the feedback. This life cycle is also supported by communication and engagement and project management aspects. The same infrastructure can be run at 3 levels of government in Australia and New Zealand, from federal, for state, and for local. So this is amazing. If I go quickly through, of course, we have local government representative that talk about the detailed design and planning. We have business case, which is the more strategic aspect of the system. We have comments about communication and engagement, convincing, selling the solution, which is the comms and engagement part of things. Then people talk about being able to explain and describe, again, comms and engagement. Quickly, consultants, we have consultants reviewing the design, very important, that sits in the concept, detailed design, delivery part of things. We have the school active travel planning that goes into when you have the strategy, then you fine tune that for schools and have a really nice investment plan or program for school. Let me look, advocacy, we have advocacy sits in the comms and engagement part of the situation. So Ken, it's fascinating. We have almost the whole gamut of life cycle covered here. And how many people do we have here? 37 people. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Great learning for us. Now, let me jump back, and I'm a bit nervous now because I only have 40 minutes to finish the rest of my material. People, don't get worried. We're gonna be safe. We're gonna be safe. Okay. Let's have a look at movement and place framework for the next exercise. So I'm relying on the movement and place framework from New Zealand, but the movement and place framework and functions are also universally very similar. So the one we use in Australia or they use in Europe, London, are similar. So let's look at the urban part of the movement and place framework. And as we mentioned, movement and place is based on place and movement functions. And the higher the value of a place, it means that an urban space is really designed for facilitating access, for living your life, for accessing education, work, shops, be around. So that kind of bustle of life, mainly human powered, mainly active. When we go up the ladder of movement, that's where you get massive amount of people transported, either through walking and cycling in many countries around the world that's happening, or through really high level, highways or tollways for cars, and also high performance like heavy vehicles. Now, in Australia and New Zealand, we have these sort of street families designed based on movement and place functions. So you have city hubs, which is more CBD areas when you have lots of movement, but also high place function. You have urban connectors where you have all the M1 roads, like high, carriageways that carry lots of cars and high speed. Then you have local streets, and we have lots of our brothers and sisters from local government here with us. Residential streets treated. Also, activity streets is those mainly arterial roads. So all of these have their own specific definitions, and we are familiar with them. Now, we want to do an exercise here.
Just before you jump into that, Hafez, just a question that had come in there was the term journey quality was mentioned at one point. I don't remember exactly where it was. Can you sort of define that term?
Sorry, Ken, I didn't fully get the question.
That's okay. It's a request for a definition of the term journey quality.
Beautiful. So I would say a journey quality has two aspects to it. What do we mean by a journey? A journey for me is a travel for a person from any A to any B in the transport system. And that journey, if we talk about active travel, it needs to be facilitated. That can be happen. For example, in the city of Amsterdam, if you come out of your place, either using walking or a bicycle or the public transport, you can reach any place, other place in Amsterdam faster than cars. So you see a number of elements in the terms of quality. It should be feasible, it should be convenient, it should be direct, it should be safe. Okay, let me give you some evidence for that. Just Google bicycle infrastructure design principles in the Netherlands. Bicycle infrastructure design principles in the Netherlands. 5 elements define quality for them. They talk about cohesiveness, as I mentioned, any A connected to any B using active travel or public transport. Directness, a journey for pedestrians shouldn't meander. As like cars, if they design for cars, they design as straight as possible. We need to do that for active travel. Convenience, a bicyclist or a pedestrian doesn't have to wait and just jump off the steps and down the steps and all those crazy to use the system. No, they need to be really comfortably use it. Then it comes to attractiveness, and the 5th element escapes me at the moment. Anyway, so
well, Angela had put in timely into the chat. I think that was covered in one of the earlier ones, but it's a very good, good one. But yeah, no, I think that's you've summed that up really nice.
Well, and thank you, Ken and Angela, for helping me here. We are a community. Okay, so I wanted to go to jump on the Miro board, and I think people are already there. And this exercise is also very interesting. And we have a very poignant point here. Let me talk about the exercise, and then I'll share what we mean by that. So the exercise. Again, I wait for you to sort of zoom in, zoom out to find this Action Learning 4. It's here.
While we're doing that, there's just can you just show there, because you're sharing the Miro board, how somebody gets their own little sticker? I think somebody's having a little bit of trouble. So over on the left there, as the Hafez is going, you drag and drop. So click on the little one that looks, and then you can expand it and type into it. There you go. It's written hello, hello, and change the size of it, delete it if you want. So hopefully that helps anybody who's there. Now, sorry, back to your little activity, please.
Sure. It's great. And also, it's a sort of, recommendation. Try and use Miro board in your workshops. and your brainstorm sessions. They are such a great way to engage with your participants. This is one of my new learnings during COVID. So one of the things I'm thankful to COVID for. So the exercise here. Think about the movement and place framework and tell us where you think we can put a race crossing and where we shouldn't be put a race crossing. And we have place function down below, and we have movement function here. And I have put the definitions for you to make reference to if you need, but I think it's quite obvious that high place is high facility for places, for people, for life, and high movement is more connection through sometimes cars. Okay, let's see what you're saying.
Yeah, Fez, just while people are doing that, I see you use the New Zealand movement and place diagrams. Is that your preferred one?
Oh, I don't want to pick sides. My heart is open to any framework. Oh, by the way, Ken, great point, great mention. So the movement and place family in the Netherlands, they call them road and street hierarchy. But they don't use movement and place, but use this exact same conceptual thinking in their road and street hierarchy. In UK, they use movement and place. In Australia, New Zealand, we use movement and place. So don't be fooled by the names or different definitions. The concept is you have two functions of place and a movement, and based on the combination of them, you have different stereotypes.
Very good. Yeah, I think it's important that people don't, get too hung up on exactly the names of these different or slightly, because you're absolutely right. It's the principle, and we can all agree on the general.
Ken, what a great point. Because the exercise we did for the name of race crossing showed exactly that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's have a look here. So I totally agree. So that, the city hubs, the CBD areas, the civic spaces, activity, all the area that I'm pointing here, all this area here can be considered. So anyone, any area rather than the urban connectors can be considered for race crossings. So the person who said all of them here, I totally agree with you that it's very inclusive, but maybe not on M1 or really high speed, high vehicle environments. So apart from that, any part of the system is either, as we said, intrinsically amenable for race crossings, or can be modified by narrowing down, by reducing the speed, by creating an environment with sometimes technology to make them amenable. Ken and Prue will be talking more about this in terms of how to make an environment more amenable. So just the point here is there is almost nowhere in an urban landscape that we cannot put race crossing in. So don't be deterred by that. That's the point. Okay, let's go back to the presentation here. And I think we're going to have a really nice sprint here. Okay. Let's practice together. What is the purpose of this practice, which is my last exercise for today? I want to achieve a few things. Okay, 3 things I want to achieve today. First of all, I want you to empathize with the thorough job that a pedestrian or walking strategist does. Many of you are already doing that, so you have that empathy already. Second, observe what I'm doing. I'm gonna be your sort of, your colleague. You send me out for work, and I will describe how it works. But you're gonna be observing what I'm doing and provide support and sometimes comment for me to improve what I'm doing. Also, conceive how we can use the material we discussed to develop those mass actions. Now, what is the exercise? So I'm gonna go to Melbourne. I'm actually in Melbourne. we're going to go out of the Melbourne CBD around 10, 15 kilometers to the east, go to the suburb of Caulfield. And in Caulfield, we have a really nice environment of having a race course, a main railway station, university campus, lots of residential shopping strips, a high mobility function, Princess Highway, and all the schools and community centers and churches, all that melange of different activities happening. Now, in this environment, let me go back, sorry. I'm sitting in my office and my manager, which is you, comes to me and says, Hafez, I want you to go out and look at this environment and tell me where to put race crossings. And they give me a hint. You can use some of the primary schools here, Lloyd School, for example, on the right-hand side of the screen here, and see if you can use it to have a walk to the station as one of the journeys and see what you find. Come back with a number of solutions for me to fund. I have some money to spend. So you're going to be observing me addressing that task, and you're my manager. At the end of the exercise, I will come back to you, give you the report. I would like to be mentored by you, and you give me areas that I can improve. Okay, and use the principles we discussed today. Now, when I did the work, so what I did, I went out, I located Lloyd Street Primary School. I had a look around, discovered different options. I found an option that was for me like shortest path to go to the station and walk around and just like have a look at function of roads, potential demand for active travel, pedestrians, and it's sort of an understanding of risk. So essentially, what I did when I took that walk, thought about function, and this is what I noticed. In the start of my journey, I saw streets like this, like 40K environment, residential, narrow, but still you see that gun barrel sort of, effect, cars parked on the side, children walking. Okay, I get the environment. And then I hit sort of, more arterial, but shopping strippy areas with tram tracks, higher traffic, higher speed, but still lots of life happening. Then I reached some roads that are 60K, more arterial, not lots of, life activities, if you will, but still lots of residential abutting the road and interesting. Then there is an access to the area of Monash University precinct and the railway station. I found it is very interesting because you have bus lanes, but then you have 60K environment, all the students and university precinct, some incongruity, if you will. And then I arrive at my destination, which is the railway station, and I see lots of cyclists and pedestrians activities, a car park, and the campus. So if I summarize my findings here, this is what I see. I saw a local street in the beginning, activity streets in the middle, a connector, and that connector creating a transition to a city hub, a really high activity area. Now, I also had a look at demand, but I didn't have data. I didn't collect pedestrian data. I didn't have time. My budget was limited. So what I did this. I look at the system and identified all those attractions for pedestrian trips. So I noticed there are schools, churches, residential areas, community centers in my local street. Then around my activity street, I saw tram stops, shops, restaurants, residentials, more residential when the environment gets a bit more car friendly, not really active travel friendly. And then a university campus, and also a station, shopping and restaurants and a car park and all that. So this is sort of, gave me a taste of the demand for active travel. Then I had a look at crash history. This is like quite available to me. I just Googled in DataVic website and there was the data available. So I just mapped the data against the location of crashes. So I saw like a sort of, number of our current casualty crashes around the area. So if you look at it more closely, when I walked, I did my sort of, road safety auditor, I put my road safety auditor hat on, and I did identify a number of locations that I thought that even if there are no crashes, they are really high risk. So you have the map of crash history and high risk locations. Then I identified or located like places that I had already pedestrian raised crossings, and I identified at least 3 or 4 of them. So it was interesting. So I just documented them. So it wasn't that nobody had thought about raised crossings, but maybe nobody had thought about the whole area in terms of identifying, strategizing, planning for them. Okay. Now, before I give you my solutions and we go through mentoring sessions, I share you a number of other thoughts about my thinking process. When you gave me the exercise, I thought about how I can, get the sort of, the budget sort of, ceiling or sort of the budget allocation and turn it into an action plan. Identify a number of, raised crossings, locate them in the environment, do some quick analysis, understanding how much they might cost us, what are the sort of potential community or infrastructure or other considerations that I need to consider in the design. And also, as I mentioned, I use the strategic lens of road and street function, pedestrian demand, and pedestrian risk to come up with my report. So my report to you is that in the area, we certainly can develop a mass action raised crossing. There are already raised crossing out there that we can incorporate in our plan. And I will be using my knowledge of high risk pedestrian areas and also areas in the network that I notice pedestrian demand, more like a common term would be desire lines I noticed, and I will be addressing them in my plan. Then I will be also suggesting a few things because some of the road and street functions I noticed were not commensurate or compatible with raised crossings. So this is my report to you, high level. And what I want to do now is stop sharing this and we jump back to the Miro board and see what do you think and what is your feedback. So let me share my Miro board here. Okay, so zoom out. So this is right after the last exercise. We're here. The majority of you are here, which is great. So the exercise is tell me, how can I improve or how could I improve my report to you? What information you needed and I didn't have? And Ken, you can comment too.
Okay, well, let everybody else have a good go at this. And they're certainly getting very good at the Miro board now. We've got about 25 minutes left in this session, Faiz, and I'll need just 5 minutes or so at the end there to take people through the learning management system.
Sure.
Make it nice. So I think got a good bit of time to have a good chat about this.
So I think I panicked too early. I think we actually going really well with time. And in the next 2 exercises, it gives me some freedom and luxury to do a little bit more in-depth sort of thematic analysis of responses.
Yeah, but I really do think it's a nice exercise here because there are quite a few people in this group that have a strategic planning function and are thinking about these exact sort of cases to put forward.
Yeah. And Ken, also one thing that I notice here, this is the beauty of this is kudos to you and Safe System Solutions, and I need to mention that. Many of the term and terminology used here, I think people have learned in previous Safe System courses. For example, people talk about Safe System assessment frameworks, or primary Safe System treatments, or Safe System approach. And as your colleague and your mate, I want to sort of, say thank you very much for actually educating the professional community. And we see the outcomes here.
Thanks, Faiz. Yeah, no, it's a good group, as we said before. And look at all these notes. I think we better start reading.
Yes. Oh. You see also, I need to share this with you and confess this. My practitioner side is actually enjoying this, because I can actually look at your comments, and by understanding your way of thinking and grouping them, your thinking, I actually think the way we can actually improve the system. So I'm actually thinking about all the research I can do with the comments you're making here. So thank you. Thank you for really sharing your thoughts with us. It's amazing. Okay, Ken, let's start, because I think we've got so many aspects here to cover. So I gently go around the comments and see if I can categorize them or analyze them. We start from the right-hand top. Can use gateway treatments. So the comment here is about the variety of solutions that we can provide to complement race crossings, very important. Provide different treatment types at different locations in the same family. Sometimes different environment definitely are compatible with different solutions. Check some speed data at different locations, very important. And as you notice in our transition section, that 60K doesn't really sit nicely, or the 40K in some of the street, or actually in any area that you have pedestrians. Talk to schools in area, check catchment area, very important influence zone analysis, and also creating those school or safe route to school programs. Very great comment. I love that. Did you go during school start or finish times and observe actual pedestrian demand? So one of the aspects that any road safety auditor should consider is having a look at the environment during different times of the day and different time of activity to have a better understanding. Also, they need to have a look at historic data for seasonal changes. And if historic data is available, that gives you them a better understanding. And great comment. Spacing between race crossing, very good point. Limited budget, we need to understand how they're going to work and be combined. As an adult, you will see things different. Oh, Bridget would love that comment.
Yeah.
And also Prue would love that comment. So totally, yes, we need to think about inclusiveness. And those modules, you're going to enjoy that. Okay. Have you examined other possible routes? I did, but very scarcely. So because I didn't have time, I chose just one route and used that knowledge to generalize my report. In an ideal world, you need to do with more people and more wide, 100%. Heavy vehicle and bus routing, that's great. So what we say, when you have movement and place, different layers and different maps, look at them to understand where your strategic bicycle network is, where is your principal pedestrian network is, where are your heavy vehicles, where is your main route for public transport, and how they actually help you to develop their strategy. Safe system assessment and safe system assessment framework is mentioned, 100%. Have you had any discussion with the road authority, DOT, councils, also sort of, jurisdictions, main roads, So I was actually a member of a council in this exercise, so I had access to internal. I picked up the phone and talked to my DOT sort of representative as well, but at the same time, you're right. What you're saying here, my paraphrase, who are your stakeholders, how you map them, goes nicely with your comms and engagement practice as well. Pedestrian data school kids using the public. Okay, so we have a number of sources of data that we can use. We can get them from schools or surveys, or we can have counts, historic data, or more pedestrian demand data we discussed. Okay, let's go back here. Aim for consistency and eligibility of route. Ken will be talking about how to create those consistent guidelines. Also, Bridget will be talking about the readability of your environment and how that influences outcomes. Great comment. Quite frankly, I think you need to teach me. Okay, move on. Crash history filtered to only include pedestrian cycle. Yes, so the point. Pedestrian treatments are usually impacting not just pedestrian crashes. They have impact on cyclist crashes and other vehicle crashes because what they do, they have an impact on the speed. Great point. What are the available budget streams available to you? Okay, so that goes to the concept of business case, and a savvy business case developer identify different buckets to tap into for the program. Good one. Let me quickly go through value for money. Look at speed data. We covered this both. We talked about costing of treatments. That's also very important. We talked about some of the aspect of that. What other options might be there for improving safety? That goes nicely with the collection of solutions that can complement race crossings. Number of residential properties around. Yes, interesting. And land use data is also publicly available, so we can use them. Operational speed, speaking with a stakeholder, we talked about stakeholder mapping. Who are the users? That goes to also the auditor identifying those different users and their needs and putting themselves in their shoes when they're, or in their wheelchairs to sort of, identify needs. So we talked about surveys and counts. If the data is not available, you can estimate. But if the tools are available, great to use them. Race crossing to ring. Yes, that's interesting. So we try to provide active travel with absolute freedom. So I'm not a big fan of fencing off pedestrians unless we have a connector of high mobility and we really don't want pedestrian to mix with traffic. Then we have fencing and then separation or grade separation. In this environment, there is only one intersection that is like really high mobility going through pedestrian desired sort of route. And I need to think harder to suggest a grade separation or not. That's it. You come down here. Consult with the schools, your stakeholder group, 100%, location of key, exactly, bus, bus and public transport sort of stops, stakeholder mapping and engagement, demand service covered, beautiful door bus routes, exactly, mapping, so there's also an interesting comment here about using tactical urbanism or temporary design. So if we cannot do permanent, we can do some of those approaches, especially in more activity like place sort of areas. Target audience, we talk about that, talking about unit students, where they're going, interviewing kids, school surveys, very important, also having school safety champions, lack of alternative options, safety assessment, unusual school. Yes, that's a very good point. Not many school children do that. But also in an ideal world, we want many school children to be able to walk and cycle to school. The route was around 2 kilometers. So that's, I think, that's a stretch for walking or cycling to school. I would say somewhere between 1 to 1.5 kilometers would be reasonable. So really good point. Hotspots, yeah, that we have 3 types of hotspots. We talked about demand and also safety. In one route, the answer, or several of them, extension. Is one route? Okay, that's absolutely right. So I chose just one route. I should have thought network. Main outcome is to remove the system. Oh, yeah. So that's actually a really good safe system comment here, that what we're trying to do is harm minimization and energy management. That's the ultimate goal, but also think about our other ultimate goal is providing for pedestrians to be able to walk. So they go hand in hand. Now, let me move out to see all your comments and see if I have missed anything. Because this is actually a really nice segue to the next exercise. And you have already identified quite a few solutions. Now, in the next exercise, which is my last exercise, I have asked, what could be done more? Could we have done more? You have already identified a number of solutions. I have raised a number of them here. Have a look at the list and tell me what else can we put out there. Or if you agree or disagree, you can use some of the tools here in the left-hand side. For example, let me use an emoji. For example, if I like some, I use it and say, I like the default. Or I might say 100%. Let me see if I can use it. Oh, I love this. This one comes here. I'll bring it here. So use some of these emojis as well to say which of the treatment you like or you don't like and what you can add. And Ken, my promise to you, within 7 minutes, I'll give back the floor to you.
Okay. Yeah, no, this is good. People are popping in emojis, they're finding those. And we're putting emojis in stickers as well. That's good. Click on those little 2 arrows next to, right at the bottom of the little menu there, or near the bottom of the menu. You can get some more options if you're looking for more things. So lots you can play with.
Can actually, for example, type here emojis.
Oh, there you go. There's all your emojis. Look at that.
And you have all the stickers here.
Nice.
Or you have all the emojis here. It's taking a bit of time. Okay. Excellent. So it's great. I think we see lots of support for local street treatments. 100%, our local areas are absolutely great examples for having those kind of solutions. We have good support for speed management, especially for a default 30 km/h. This is our ambition for Australia and New Zealand, to follow our brothers and sisters in Europe. For example, like in 2 weeks' time, I'm traveling to Munich for holidays. And in the city of Munich in Germany, 80% of urban areas posted 30 km/h. 80% of their urban area. So we have another number of solutions mentioned here. People talked about speed zone cameras and using technology. When I was visiting City of Toronto, they had this mass action speed management treatment and they use like those kind of speed display, dynamic speed displays, which detect your speed in a local street and shows the speed and has a complimentary message that thank you for driving safely, or consider our children, you're driving too fast, da, da, da. So that can be helping as well. This is my favorite emoji. Whoever did this, thank you very much. Wow. Integrate race crossing with a university master plan or the shop. This is actually a fantastic, great planning comment. How we can marry up our plans or sort of, bundle them up with other sort of planning actions, help universities. A memory. When we were developing race crossings and also strategic cycling corridors in the Monash Council, we actually worked with Monash University Clayton campus to identify those routes and put money together for them to do the uni side and we do the government side and work together. So great comment. Drive with feedback signs, exactly, the technology we discussed. All of these, I totally agree. Funding is important. Local government and funding are on our mind, 100%. Ken and I have been engaged in many ASTRO's projects, and our mandate is developing cost-effective local government cognizant solutions. Really on the top of our agenda. Initiative like walking to school, buses, get community involved, 100%. Get parents involved, make them cognizant and aware of these changes and potential impacts. Use color on pedestrian placed areas. Actually, really interesting, raise that with Bridget as well, in terms of how readability, color can help with inclusiveness, and sometimes maybe with confusion. So an interesting area. Also, Bridget is a psychologist as well, so can talk about those behavioral impacts. So in essence, I don't see any sort of negative reactions to any of the solutions, and we have quite a few solutions identified. So let me go back to my last slide. So again, my name is Hafez Alavi. I'm a pedestrian safety and sustainable mobility expert working in Victoria. It's been my absolute pleasure to work with you and Ken today on this. And having said that, Ken, any last question for me before I hand over to you for finalizing?
Nothing in the chat at this stage, but yeah, please, if anybody does want to pop anything into the chat while I just show people through the learning management system and a little assignment we've got, we can do that. And we'll get back to Hafez with that. But let me jump to the learning management system here, and I'll just check Hafez is seeing that. Hopefully, yes, good, okay. So in the learning management system, which I said you need access to, so if you don't have that, that access, you need to get it. You can see here that we have a page which has some resources, and within the resources is where we will drop any different resources that we've talked about in our sessions or are relevant to our sessions in there, papers, guidelines. There's a whole folder here on design and engineering standards and guidelines and resources, different videos and things, and we'll build that as we go. Each module, you'll see, these ones haven't appeared yet, but Hafez is there nicely in color because we're into that one, and you can see that you can get the PDF of Hafez's slides there, so you can have a look at those and download those as you go. And there's another resource there. But the activity we've got for you to do here, you'll click on that and you will go in here and simply, what we want you to do, or Hafez, do you want to explain this one? It thinks sort of close. Oh, I'll walk you through. You can add anything. So we want you to identify a typical walking route in your neighborhood. So, for example, it could be from your home to the shops or to a public transport station or a jogging route or something like that, something that is close to you, easy, common for you. We want you to walk that route and consider the key conflict points related to safety, security, accessibility, convenience. And the general guidance is we don't want it to be long. We don't want this to be a massive exercise. Sort of 500 meters is plenty. It'll give you a good feel for it. And then we want you to complete the following survey. And the link is here, okay? So, and we're going to want you to do this fairly quickly, I suppose, early, because
Ken, a comment there. So I think in this round, we're gonna start with who for the next one, and Prue would be the third one.
Oh, okay. So this is
actually
I'm a module ahead of myself, am I? Okay. Well, in that case, we will move this to the next round activity. So this is one with Prue, but you can have a start to have a think about the route that you might like to walk, and you will be getting a survey at the end of next session, and then you'll have a little bit longer to actually fill that out. Just ask you some questions, which then Prue will use in her module, which is going to be module 3 this time, to delve into that. So hopefully that makes sense. Thanks, Hafez. Thanks for pointing that out. So back to here. When you do get to this, you will simply upload it. I'm in the back end here, but you will have an area where you can upload it. So these will appear as we go, and we'll be able to continue on with Bridget. Am I correct?
Yes, we are.
So Bridget will be next.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll be swapping the order of these in the background. Good. Thank you, everybody. Any final questions pop up there? Yes, the due date will change then. So it is just before Prue's. So we might send an email out just to clarify all this. Sorry, a little bit of confusion on my end. But I want to just spend our last minute saying thank you to Hafez for his wonderful work and sharing that lots of exercises with us, which provided great value, I think, in us getting that holistic thought of, the importance of increasing active transport modes, ensuring we can do it safely, all the benefits, some really tangible evidence there for the benefits, and how we can use those to convince others for the business case for walking and cycling. And as said there, we'll pick up next session and have a think about anything you would like to ask specifically of any of the presenters in the future. And of course, you can email Hafez at any point or get in contact with him if you've got other specific questions.
And Kim, last word from me. I want to thank my participants here, because any course, any workshop is as lively as the participants' contribution. Your comments, your level of engagement, which was significantly more than what I remember from some similar courses. So I'm very thankful and well done to you. You made my day. You did.
Good. Thank you, everybody. And as I say, we'll send out an email this afternoon just clarifying exactly where we're at and timing of different assignments. But we thank you very much.
Thank you, Ken, as well, for your lovely work.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you, people. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.